Hello, Internet. I'm HamsterBomb.
And I'm Zach.
And this is HITBOX, the gaming podcast where we talk about video games and all sorts of things that you can play with your hands and eyeballs simultaneously.
And sometimes your feet if you're ingenious enough.
You know what? I wouldn't put it past Masahiro Sakurai in particular. You know how he plays with one hand on each controller? If he wants to figure out, what happens if 4 people play this at once? He just takes off his socks and shoes and starts playing with 4 controllers all at once.
That man's gonna break out the DDR dance pad.
I know. He's already got to have some sort of weird split brain in order to do this, which is a real thing. People can actually, fool themselves, play rock, paper, scissors with themselves, and things like that.
Not me.
Can you imagine 4? Anyway, this had nothing to do with what we're actually talking about today.
Absolutely
Today,
nothing.
Zach is back on the show. Welcome back, Zach.
Thank you.
He got a little bit of a surgery, and then he caught a little case of the sickies. The no-no thing.
I held hands with the Greek goddess of chaos.
And he decided to fully embrace it and come right on back to HITBOX and make some more junk for you to listen to. And the lovely junk we have today is, holy crap, we are going through years of gaming history and basically saying, what if it is that year? What do we have to play and what's happening?
What do we got?
Holy crap, 2001.
Yeah, that is a huge year, because not only do we have some amazing games coming up, we've got some good systems launching this year.
I would say it's more so the big events that are happening this year and things to come. And another big thing is the last year we did was with the underwhelming release of the PS2.
Yeah.
Whoa, the PS2 is going to be half our list today.
Basically,
The PS2 is going to be big. And we do have some other systems we want to get to, and we surprisingly have some N64 it's still going to be popping up on here. But for the most part, this is the year that, at least in my opinion, where we have finally jumped over from what I'm going to call the retro era into modern age. Because previously, or really this is like the last year where it's kind of acceptable to have, an N64 game or like a low poly game that is modern. From here on out, the GameCube, the PS2, the Xbox, spoiler alert, these are the things that are all coming out this year.
Yeah.
Well, the PS2 was last year, but it's really going to start kicking some butt this year. And the console wars are finally going to start really being a thing, and modern gaming is going to take hold this year.
Yeah, I think so, because one of the other things that happens around this time, if we wanted to start getting a lot of these releases and events out of the way...
Yeah, there's...
Sega kind of steps out of the console market at this point.
Yes, and this may or may not be related to the unfortunate death of their chairman. Isao Okawa, I believe is his name. And I'm not entirely sure how much of a say over the entirety of Sega this man had, but it is still a correlation that we need to point out that at this point, Sega drops out of the console market.
Yes.
And even though I know they were struggling, personally, I see this as a big shame.
It really
because
is.
Because imagine a world where, instead of Xbox, for example, we had modern Sega as, the main 3 consoles to choose from.
Yeah, right.
Xbox is almost like, you got an Xbox because you don't have a gaming computer anymore today. That's really it.
More or less, yeah.
And it's really just a competition between Sony and Nintendo. And Valve is kind of stepping in there, but it really, once again, is just with the Steam Deck. It really is just another way to play PC games.
Very much so, yeah.
So, in that sense, I feel like we really lost something. Having, the big 3, which we did at this time, because gaming computers were really not a thing at this point. No, you're playing on whatever could possibly do your homework on, the bare minimum computer.
Yeah.
And they still cost quite a lot of money, so...
Wasn't it 2001 Windows XP finally released?
I'm not positive, but I know it was a year off of 2000.
Yeah, so it's you're finally now getting XP, so it's we're finally moving into a more modern age even in the PC market.
Or just office life in general. Windows XP, I know this is kind of unrelated, but there is so much happening just in terms of technology this year that it is such a shame Sega drops now, and Sega was the one that was always pushing the envelope for hardware in terms of content of their games too. And sometimes
instead of having the Xbox Series X, we could have had a Dreamcast 3 or by this point or something. Yeah,
man, I've even heard talks of a Dreamcast Classic that was supposedly scrapped because it was they thought people wouldn't pay for it because I could imagine it would cost a lot to have that sucker run, but I'd have done it, Zach.
I would have bought it.
I'd have bought it.
Oh, my lord.
Oh, man, I would jump all over an N64 classic, too. I mean, N64 is probably the hardest system to emulate, even today, including the PS2. PS2, oof. We're not talking about emulation today. We have a whole...
Not yet.
We have a 4-hour stream episode where you can listen to us ramble about emulation.
Hey.
Today, we're going to be talking about all sorts of big stuff that happens this year, and namely, as we already mentioned, the GameCube and the Xbox release this year.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, we're full on in the trifecta, sorry Sega, of the console wars. And the Game Boy Advance also comes out this year. And, this was... Geez, where do you even start? Just in terms of like trying to figure out what do you want to buy this year, because that's like kind of what the whole point of these yearly episodes is, like where are you putting your money? If you live right now in 2001, even with hindsight, where are you putting your money?
We're not coming back in time as time. Yeah, we're not coming back in time as time travelers to tell you what to invest in. We're telling you this is the game you want for this year.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, and we know a lot of stuff coming later. Like the GameCube is going to soar later, and on launch it's okay. And to be honest, I think like most of the big stuff for Game Boy Advance and GameCube both, I would say they're really going to start getting great later.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
They're okay. We'll get there when we get there. And
unfortunately,
Xbox it exists. It's really just starting.
Well,
so
for me, it's like I've never really been an Xbox person, so I'm not as familiar with this era of Microsoft's consoles. Like, they got a lot of Sega stuff.
That's
because true. Sega, of course, like we just said, dropped out. But, it's other than that, it's like I'm not sure what else around this time the Xbox was really doing.
Right, and we, of course, are researching each episode, even though, because, of course, nobody's played everything. Nope. And, of course, there's going to be stuff this year that we don't mention.
Exactly.
But we should still try and get into it. We will jump in here and there when we have a game that we want to call rapid fire, but from here on out, we're going to try and keep it in terms of each console. Just, at least that's how I organized the games this time, because we have a ton of them to get through, and we're going to try and be faster, even though Kim has set a new standard for longest episodes of HITBOX, for crying out loud.
How long was that?
Oh, the Witcher one was 3 hours, Zach, and that was just the end product. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's
go. So I mentioned the N64. Well, guess what? Conker's Bad Fur Day comes out this year.
Heck yes.
Oh, before we actually get into the actual game itself, I should mention, for those of you who are watching us, we have some footage going in the background, and Zach's deciding to play some lovely game from this year, whatever it happened to be. I think it's going to be Sonic Advance 2.
Yeah, Sonic Adventure 2. Heck yeah.
Adventure 2. I'm sorry. Advance 2 is actually a game, and that has not come out yet.
Not yet.
No.
Not for another 2 years.
My bad. I meant Advance 2. Yeah.
You're good.
We'll get there when we get there to talk about that. But yeah, N64, we are still talking about this thing. A very, very late bloomer game on it. Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Uh-huh.
Wow, I did review this, so if you want to hear more information on the game, I can very comfortably say go check that review. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
This game is hysterical.
Oh my god. I went back to it not that long ago, and it's aged kind of poorly in terms of controls, but my god, is it worth going back to, though, just for the humor alone.
It's so funny, and it's still funny today. And that's the thing, like, a lot of humor generally doesn't age well at all, and then, like, a comedy 3D platformer by Rare, we should mention, the Banjo-Kazooie guys.
Yes.
But even more crude. This is an M-rated N64 game. And, yeah, the controls, because I think it was M-rated, they thought, okay, so it's an older generation, we should make the game a little more challenging.
Yeah.
And some of those bits are just so tough.
And also, too, given how the N64 controller is laid out, it kind of doesn't help with that.
To make it even more tough, this game is constant parodies, one after another, every level. But because of that, it's also changing up what the gameplay is every time. So you can't, like, get good at it. Each level will totally change. You might be doing a traditional 3D platformer, and then you're doing, like, a third-person shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will shift constantly. Sometimes you're actually flying like as a bat trying to feed your vampire grandpa, or you're fighting through the war and Saving Private Ryan. It's
you've entered the Matrix.
Yes,
literally.
It is constant bombardment of 90s references, and it is a hilarious time even today. I think probably the most unfortunate part about this was, one, it was coming out at a bad time when Nintendo had this era of the kiddie games.
Yeah.
So this audience didn't have this console. This probably should have come out on the PlayStation 1. I think it would have done better.
Maybe.
I mean, Rare wasn't Rare was working as Nintendo stuff. You know, that's what they knew. So, because this game unfortunately was a huge financial flop, even though it's seen as a cult classic today, and I would definitely say check it out.
Yeah, like the sales were okay, but it was just in development for so long under a different name and different style.
Even the promotions were so out there for this. They were actually giving out like Conker's Bad Fur Day condoms.
Yep.
And all sorts
of
stuff.
At E3.
Real. I'm not kidding. This was real. But anyway, so the N64, yes, it's at the end of its lifespan, but it's still showing that it has some crazy fun stuff in there. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's just a relic of the past, and you really have no choice but to, I think you could play, there is a Live and Reloaded version.
The Xbox remake, yep.
Yeah, there's a remake of this. It's a very faithful remake, and it's mostly graphical and gameplay that has been fixed up. I think even all of the original voices are kept.
All the original voices are kept. We've adopted a twin stick setup for the way the camera works.
It's so much better for the shooting segments alone.
But the thing is, like, they've changed up enough of the content itself, like what goes on in the game, the references, and like the
some of the censoring is off too.
Yeah, they added more censoring.
Yeah, the game actually had like joke censoring in it, which we should probably mention. It's almost, I think, fully voice acted.
Yeah, the whole thing is voice acted.
N64, it is super impressive, and the graphics are actually really nice. Like I could see it looking like a PS1 game and being on par with some of the best looking stuff on the system. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, to an extent. But I mean, Rare is just very talented at what they do. So it was a shame to see that flop so hard because it's such a good game.
It is.
But sticking to this console, this will probably be the last time we ever talk about the poor N64. And this may confuse a lot of you guys who are familiar with Animal Crossing. But it wasn't just a GameCube game, because we saw it as a GameCube game over here in the West, but in Japan it was an N64 game.
Yeah, it was a very late release on the 64, and when it came to the States, it was a launch title.
If you kind of think of like Zelda Twilight Princess or even Breath of the Wild, it's one of those like dual, like it happened to be between an era, which is why Conkers is, at the end of the N64. Yeah. But it was between that era, and they tried to like co-develop it or like repurpose it quickly to make it work on GameCube, which was a great idea.
Yep.
The reason, from my cursory research of this, was that they didn't think that this idea of this type of game, if we all know what Animal Crossing is, that they didn't think it would go over very well in the West. They thought this is the kind of thing that Japan really likes, and I get that. It's kind of like one of those daily login things. You want to decorate your island. There's no real goal other than to, gather money and pay off a debt.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even really add up to anything in terms of the story. It's really just a calm farming game.
Yeah, I mean, all it amounts to in the original, spoiler alert, you get a golden statue in your town with you as the subject. Yeah. But the thing I remember most about it, because this was one I remember playing a lot with my brother and eventually showing our mom how to play, because she looked at it, she's like, oh, this is really cute. You want to play? Yeah, sure. This is the woman who actually was playing like Mario Kart and Pokemon as well. So it's
your parents are much cooler than mine. But and if I remember correct, not to talk too much about your parents, is she not still playing this?
She is.
That is on Animal Crossing GameCube. GameCube Animal Crossing. She's still playing to this day in 2023.
Yep.
That is incredible.
But it's a very easy game to get into, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, it's very so approachable. You could literally give it to your parents back then.
Yeah, and it's a very family-friendly game too, because in the GameCube release, you could have up to 4 human villagers, and so there was also that element of competition because, like I said, at the end, if you paid off your debt, you got a gold statue. However, if up to 4 people were in your village, the second person to pay it off gets a silver, bronze, and then like a crappy metal like tin or bronze or something like that. Yeah.
So it's almost like a race.
Yeah. There's that element of competition to it, but
it's interesting.
But yeah,
I don't think they have anything like that in the modern ones.
No, because in the newest one,
it's all open and kind of multiplayer anyway, so people can kind of like pop in and out of islands.
Yeah, and it's like you don't get your own save. Like everyone is all on the same island.
That's
you can't even.
Another. I think that's just a modern video gamey thing where they're trying to drive more sales.
Yeah, but
which really sucks. We're gonna actually get to a few other games if we're gonna try and tangent with that alone.
Yeah.
A lot of the games in this era are taking advantage of split screening.
Yes.
Which is something, even back then, it was kind of tough to do because you didn't have much physical screen space. TVs weren't so big.
No.
TVs are gargantuan today compared to what we had of those tubes back then.
Well, and also, too, we went from like a 4x3 letterbox to a 16x9. 9. That was a huge jump.
And what was really interesting at this era was seeing games that were designed to work for both. And it would detect your TV, and it would actually change. It's so cool. So
really is.
Yeah, and anymore you only see it as the new one, and this is like a lost feature that no one really would think of anymore. That they had to.
Yeah.
It's almost like trying to make sure that your system. You know how hard it is even for people to make PC games and they don't know what the specs of your computer are going to be?
Yes.
Imagine if it doesn't even know what the output is going to be and it needs to change its UI completely. That's so cool.
That's some forward thinking, yeah.
It is. So since the GameCube is coming out this year and we have a few other GameCube games we're going to talk about, let's move on to, a close contender for my favorite game of this year, honestly. I love this game, even though it is so freaking hard.
And what game is that, Alex?
That is Pikmin.
Yeah!
Pikmin.
Love Pikmin so much.
Pikmin. I have had this GameCube disc sitting on my shelf since the early 2000s. I got it secondhand, and I wanted to play it so bad. I dabbled into it a little bit. Like, it was just... I had so many things to play. It was just one of those games that I happened to buy and just, like... I got into it a little bit, and then like some other thing shows up, and I got distracted. And it took me so long and so many tries. And I remember one particular time, I was like, darn it, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna beat Pikmin. This game is designed to allow you to fail. We're gonna get into that. I had an army of 100 and of red and yellow Pikmin, and I see some new ship part I need. And we'll discuss the game in a bit. And we run into the water to get it, and all of my Pikmin drown.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was screwed. And then you learn the hard way. That's what this game is all about. It's about learning things the hard way. So Pikmin is kind of inventing its own genre, and nothing else is doing this.
Yeah.
Not even to this day.
It kind of takes like a real-time strategy basis, but it takes it in such a vastly different direction that, like you said, it basically is like its own genre.
Instead of real-time strategy being the omnipotent god looking down at your troops or your tower defense or whatever, you're actively the main character, Captain Olimar, and you are running around and actually plucking your recruits, which are Pikmin, weak little plant-like creatures that don't really do anything on their own, but if you give them the orders in large numbers, they can take down large threats. They can defeat or break down large walls that are impeding your progress. They can do all sorts of little things, and each color does something different. In this game, red ones are immune to fire and deal extra damage, which is very important for later in the game. The yellow ones you throw higher, and they can carry bomb rocks. And the blue ones can walk in the water, as I didn't know at the time. And the others are all susceptible to their problems. And what you want to do is you're at a very tight window for time. So Captain Olimar crash lands on this mysterious planet, which actually turns out to be Earth in a post-apocalyptic form.
They don't ever say it directly, but it's basically Earth.
Oh, it's totally, it has to be Earth. Yeah, so anyway, you get to this point where his ship is blown up, and there are 30 pieces of the ship scattered all over this planet, and he can't feasibly do this himself, so he has to figure out a way to use the Pikmin, which are responding to his whistles, in order to try and bring them all back to his ship. And each day you spend is one more day on the clock.
You have a 30-day limit.
And you need to... you don't have to get all of the ship parts. There's a few that are actually optional.
Yeah, I think the minimum is like, what, 23 or something like that?
It's not like a set number. There are some pieces that are technically optional pieces.
Right.
But some are like required for him to actually achieve orbit and make it back to his home planet of Hakatate, I think.
Yes.
So luckily, like, the final boss is actually guarding a non-essential piece, and there's a few other non-essentials out there, but for the most part, you're probably going to get all of them that you can. The thing is that time limit is what's scary about this game, and you're always trying to figure out how to manage everything, and the sun will come up and go down very quickly, so you will think you have a ton of time in the beginning, and you'll start sending troops out. Oh, go grab this. We'll start fighting this thing over here while they're working on that bridge. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh shoot, the path back to this area was either blocked by something or went by a bunch of fire, and I had yellow and blue Pikmin carrying that thing, and now they're all dead, that thing's abandoned. Or you have a bunch of Pikmin that are standing out somewhere, and now the sun's going down, and you're going to find where they are, because if they're not in your party or inside their onion by the time that the day is over, those Pikmin have died, because you have to leave at sunset, and they will all come back and just be consumed. So it's morbid, and
it really is.
It's a cute little game, but boy, it's almost like a war game.
Very much so, yeah, because it starts out like at the Garden of Hope, and the music is very nice, and it's relaxed.
Very cute and relaxing.
But as you go further
very few threats there, too.
Yeah.
Almost none.
But as you go further in, you start seeing more and more really weird creatures.
Yeah.
And it gets darker, and you kind of realize this is a survival game more than anything else, almost.
Yeah, and it totally is. And these little Pikmin guys are giving their life for you.
Yeah.
And you watch their little ghosts come up, and even Captain Olimar in his journals will talk about how troubled he is about seeing, like, them die in front of him.
I know. Well, the thing is, not only is it the little ghost that gets me, but it's their little...
Yeah, I know. Oh gosh, and that sound can actually compound in the first one too. If you use too many at once, it'll be louder.
And it's a chorus of pain.
Oh, it's awful. And make it even scarier if you hear that noise and they're not on screen, because you can hear it anywhere on the map.
Yep.
You know something bad is going on right now, and I need to figure it out. And Olimar is not fast.
No, he's really small. So the thing that this game actually taught me to do is how to multitask properly.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very good teacher to get you to multitask. Because there were some times where it's like, okay, if I'm able to set this up in one day, I could potentially get, like, on this map, 2 different ship parts to come back to me on the same day.
Or more.
Yeah, or more. Thereby reducing the amount of time I need in order to be able to actually get all of the parts.
Yeah, it's about thinking about the best way of efficiency. That's what's so cool about this game. You'll play it the first time, and you'll think, I know I can do that better. Because like this one day, we fought this boss, our Pikmin were carrying back this big ship part as a reward back to base, and the time was showing it was coming too fast, and they weren't going to make it, so you call them all back and you run back to the onion. And then luckily the parts stay where you left them. So you don't have to fight a boss again. You can go right back, you pick it up, but that was your whole day and you kind of wasted it, and you're like, I know I could have done it. And and just to prove it, speedrunners beat each of those days in one.
Oh my god.
It's unreal when you see them get to, like, the distant spring, I think. Oh my gosh, that area is so hard. But you can get every part in a single day. It's it's
I'm
crazy.
Not that good.
And if you even get, based on a certain day, if you get to the distant spring before, I think it's like day 15, if you're doing really well, a secret boss will appear to really mess you up. It's called the Smoky Prog. And weirdly enough, that's the first spirit you fight in the World of Light in Super Smash Bros.
Oh my god,
and
that's right.
I remember starting that, like the scariest thing ever you could ever encounter in Pikmin 1 is your opening. It doesn't make any sense. It's so backwards. But anyway, I could talk about Pikmin all day. I love that game.
It's very good. The 4th game just released not that long ago.
And a HD port, I think, of the first one. And 2, you can play on the Nintendo Switch right now.
Yep, you can get the digital version, or you can wait for a physical release later this year.
Which will pack both together.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
1 and 2.
And Pikmin 3 Deluxe is still available.
You can buy Pikmin 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the Nintendo Switch.
How amazing is that?
I know, isn't that great? We never see that kind of love for a series.
Especially not for Pikmin. Oh my god.
I know, poor Pikmin. I'm glad it's doing better now.
Yeah, me too.
Because back on the GameCube, I mean, hey, I was floored when I saw Captain Olimar announced for Smash Bros. Brawl on the Smash Dojo website, logging in the morning. I remember that day clearly. I went into school and I was telling people, like, Captain Olimar is in Smash Brothers. Who? You know, from Pikmin. What?
Yeah.
And that's everybody's reaction. Like, come on, man. Come on, guys.
We are dozens who love Pikmin 1.
Whole dozens. We are legion. But moving on to another GameCube game. Hey, Sega is actually still alive here. We're talking about Super Monkey Ball.
Super Monkey Ball. It kind of happened.
It kind of happened. That's really, this isn't like a Pikmin thing where we're going to talk for minutes on end about this.
Yeah.
But Super Monkey Ball is still like a really cool, like, arcadey kind of idea of a game. I really like it.
Yeah.
But it's not one of those things that's like changing any, pushing buttons, like, doing genres.
Like the main twist is like, instead of you being
in a genre. It's really like a tilt arcade kind of thing. We should probably mention, if you don't know, you're effectively a little monkey trapped inside of one of those capsule toy pill ball things.
A gotcha toy.
Yeah, a gotcha thing from Japan, and you are literally just running the ball and rolling until you touch a bunch of bananas and get through a goalpost.
Right, but the thing is, the main twist is that you're not moving Ai or any of the other monkeys you play as. You actually move the level itself.
He's running in it to try and stay level.
Yeah.
And you are in control of the entire tilting arcade thing, which is why that was the first thing that came to mind. There's like a lot of mini games that kind of effectively do this.
Well, it was an arcade game before it was a GameCube game, so yeah.
And the concept of this is you can either go for all the bananas or you can go for time. And boy, if you watch people online go for time, especially some of the newer ones, there's Super Monkey Ball,
Banana Mania.
Banana Mania. There's a ton of new versions of these, and Banana Mania has and didn't it port like a ton of old levels on top of like rebuilding new stuff?
It's basically the first 2 games plus a bunch of the ones from either Adventure or Deluxe.
Yeah, it's huge. So you can still play this on modern platforms spruced up. People do some crazy things in that. Like, you can
nuts.
just send that ball screaming across the field. And the thing is, what's scary about trying to do that is there's so many ways to fall.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, obviously, fall to your death, because then you'll be reset, or you're losing time, or you'll be kicked out of a sequence of levels and have to redo them.
Yep, exactly. Especially if you're going for, like, the challenge levels. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It gets hard.
But yeah, it's
fun.
It's one that I never really got into as a kid.
Me neither.
But I
wanted to, though.
Yeah. It's
I've
really
since
cool.
played several, but
yeah, it's not really my thing, I found.
I just wish there was a little more to it. Like, I feel like it's one of those IPs that's just almost there.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe it needs some new crazy element to it, like multiplayer or something all at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head here.
I mean, we had like a bunch of the mini games and stuff in it.
know.
I guess it's just meant to be more of a bite-sized experience.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But still, the GameCube has a few other things for us here, and boy, if it weren't Pikmin, gosh, Zach, I think this is gonna be it. I love Super Smash Bros. Melee. If you just at any point, even prior to this point, for the past like 10 years, if you walk up and say, name a game from 2001, Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Done.
Super Smash Bros. Melee. That immediately comes to mind. Because this may be one of the most memorable game experiences for me for my entire life. Because this, and I've reviewed this too, so I don't have to go too much on this.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, shameless plug. I distinctly remember playing at a cousin's house. He had an N64. I really wanted one. Parents didn't want to let me have one. And funny story, now that I can finally go on a quick tangent about this, the only reason I was ever allowed to have a game console was for Christmas that year. Their family, my cousin's family, knew how much I loved playing games with them. Yeah. They got me, it was actually a version of a game we're going to be talking later. SSX Tricky comes out this year. They got me SSX 3 for the GameCube.
Yes, okay.
And I was like, oh, wow! Mom, how do I play this? And that started a nice little public embarrassment that my parents were saying I was not allowed to play games because video games are the devil. And then all of a sudden, like, they're into that's ridiculous. Come on, let him play the game. And they luckily talked them into it, allowed me to have a console. GameCube, first home console I was allowed to play. That's finally I was allowed to play something. Because before this point, I was only allowed to play like handheld stuff because I could take it outside. But anyway, Smash Melee. This is me for the first time getting to go into a store and actually look at real home console games and think about which one I want to get. Are you telling me that the game that I played on N64, where all of these cool video game characters got to fight each other at the same time, there's a new one with like triple the roster on my new system?
Boy howdy.
Sign me the hell up.
Sign me up.
That was so, and it plays so well. We didn't even get to the game. Like this game was under a crazy time limit for its development too. And for it to be so good, people are still having tournaments to this day in Smash Melee and still claim that this is the best Smash Brothers. Before Ultimate came out, I would have said, I don't know, maybe. But
maybe, yeah.
But anymore, no, I don't.
To go off of what you were saying for the crunch time, when people actually broke it down, they realized that, like you said, there was some cut content and some characters we didn't get, and a lot of the hitboxes and the way like some fighters work is really wonky.
Yep.
But if that's the only thing that had to happen in order for us to get this,
right?
In
and
the
instead of
we got,
right, and instead of like new characters designed based on being who they are. We would get, say, Ganondorf is effectively Captain Falcon again, even though he wouldn't play like that at all in his game if he were fairly given the dev time.
Right.
And, like, you would never expect Dr. Mario to be in the game, but there he is because it's something easy for them to pad out the time, just switch Mario, changes timings up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's enough to make the gameplay interesting.
Yes.
And I still really appreciate having, like, Young Link, for example, and, like, the different versions of those. Yeah. But also, like, the weird oddball inclusions in this. Like, Mr. Game & Watch.
Mr. Game & Watch.
Like what is up with... Yeah, and Fire Emblem. This is actually the first time in the West we are seeing Fire Emblem. This was something we just recently talked about in N64 Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Like, this game just came out, and then bam, the GameCube's out, and holy crap, we're hit with this new grand... This was like the big... Now, I know E3 was very small at the time, but there is footage of it. You can see them revealing Smash Brothers. And I think even in that initial video, there is one champ out there who sees that intro. They basically show the intro video if you turn on Smash Melee, which I love that video.
Yep.
That's what they announced this with. There is someone in the crowd who goes, "Ice Climbers!"
What a Chad.
I know, what a Chad. So, especially for that wonky NES game, but still, there's a lot of great picks in this, and I have like Mewtwo. I remember seeing that shadow for the unlock, and I was like, there's no one can beat Mewtwo. What are you talking about?
Right,
and then you sing for Ganondorf. Like, are you out of your mind?
They did it.
They did it anyway. And funnily enough, this is another fun fact about Melee before I move on. Though, actually, we probably should mention the adventure mode they added in this is spectacular. And I still wish we had something like this in Smash Brothers to this day. But back to my tangent, because we have to move on. This is actually the first time that Roy from Fire Emblem is appearing in a video game.
Yep.
Smash Melee came out before his game, which was on the Game Boy Advance, I think?
The second Game Boy Advance game, the Sacred Stones.
Yep. We're not going to be talking about it today because it didn't come out yet. Sakurai with insider knowledge. I'm telling you.
Hey, Intelligence Systems, what are you working on?
If you wanted proof that this guy was just a fanboy of Fire Emblem all along, there's your evidence. He has insider knowledge there.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. It would not surprise me in the least.
So he makes some amazing work, and I'm actually very, very glad that guy has actually finally said he is not working on any more main games. Let that poor man rest. He's been hospitalized multiple times over the series, including this game.
I know, yeah, right. It's like he was answering work email and phone calls and stuff while in the hospital. It's like, my dude, you just collapsed from exhaustion and an ulcer. Quit.
Right. I think he developed tinnitus in his arms.
Yes. He got tendonitis, and I think he was
tendonitis. I'm sorry.
And
tinnitus is your ears.
And then carpal tunnel was gonna be a problem if he didn't cut back. It's like, oh my god, dude, please just take care of yourself. Be there.
It's amazing that even after all of that, he can still do what we mentioned at the top of this. Unrelated, he can still play his own Smash Brothers fighting game with either hand simultaneously against himself.
Yep.
That man is unreal.
Let him just make his YouTube videos in peace.
Oh, I appreciate that he does that so much.
I know.
It's so great insight into video game development.
I'm not a game dev, but holy crap, does the man give out some good advice.
I know. But anyway, so since I mentioned it, let's briefly talk about SSX Tricky. Because I did mention the only SSX I played was SSX 3 because of that one instance. And so from my brief experience of the series, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's effectively, I really liked the music that they got, from licensing stuff into it. I don't know if Tricky does the same.
Yeah, it does exactly the same. 3 and Tricky are very, very similar. I think Tricky just kind of goes a little bit more into the ludicrous levels of the way that extreme sports games kind of play with avalanches and stuff like that. Yeah,
3 has all that too. It's so crazy. Yeah, you can unlock a cow to race as, like a chipmunk. There's all sorts of ridiculous.
It's basically like a refinement, more or less, of 3. And from what I understand of people who enjoy the SSX series, it's always a toss up between the 3rd and Tricky, which is the best. Which I can see.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
now I'm not a sports guy at all. No. But now, of course, I'm sitting there like this is literally the only thing I can play outside of that beautiful bonus disc that came with the GameCube. And got me into The Legend of Zelda in 3D outside of just my little Game Boy Advance. Link to the Past came to Game Boy Advance, and
that's
we know
2002.
2002.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I'm not playing this launch day, but it was early enough that I know I still had that bonus disc.
Yeah.
So. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
But anyway, that's basically SSX Tricky. It's this very popular snowboarding. Did we even say snowboarding?
No.
Boy, we're idiots.
Yeah. Hey, you don't have to tell me. I know that already.
Yeah, going through and listening to some of the HITBOX episodes, in hindsight, I will listen, we're trying to introduce a game and we talk it up, and eventually we forget to say the title, and we'll go through the whole thing, talk about the entire game, and I hope you were watching the video and not listening, because boy, we are boneheads.
Like with Doom 2, it wasn't until the very end of the segment when we mentioned,
this is Doom 2. Let's move on to the next game. It's almost like a guessing game when you're listening to our HITBOX episodes. Like, God, what are they talking about? Anyway, moving on. We have one more game I want to talk about on the GameCube. I'm going to promise. This thing, and I'm telling you, the GameCube only gets better. I think that the opening lineup of the GameCube is just meh. And I love Pikmin and Smash Melee. It starts, going crazy later. The GameCube, unfortunately, didn't sell too well in this generation compared to the PS2 was just... It could play DVDs, guys. I mean, if the GameCube could play DVDs, I think we would have a very different 2001.
If Nintendo wasn't weird and wanted to keep its copy protection the way they wanted to
make sure their discs are too small so that you can't.
Yeah.
Anyway, Nintendo being Nintendo, GameCube didn't do as well, but still we have a lot of great games that probably be much better known today if the GameCube did better. But still, we're going to be talking about a game that also launched on the Dreamcast, which, as we know, Sega rip. We're talking about Sonic Adventure 2.
Sonic Adventure 2.
Which you're watching right now, so you should, well, unless you're just listening to us on Spotify, in which case, have this lovely, seductive moment together as we talk about Sonic Adventure 2.
My God, how I love Sonic Adventure 2.
Sonic Adventure 1 is like the mean one, and it did a great job with taking Sonic into the 3D space.
Yeah.
This is the one that figured it out, I think.
I think so. The one thing I kind of regret that they did take out, but I understand why they did it, was the adventure aspect, the thing that actually, made it an adventure game where you explored the hub towns or the hub centers to find the levels and all that. Mm-hmm. And they turned it more into like a stylized menu, which is cool looking, and it makes it very easy to get into levels quick and to find the ones you want.
The levels are huge too, so it's not like would want to be spending a ton of time in there anyway.
Exactly.
The version I played was Battle 2.
Yes.
So I'm not sure.
That was the one I played.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure all the stuff that they added and changed in this, but
I think it was just mainly the multiplayer aspect. That's why they gave it the battle.
Which I actually did play a lot of this with my brother, and we would repurpose some of the stages that are races into the weirdest of ways. So our favorite one to do was there is a pyramid stage where you're on grind rails.
Oh yeah.
You remember that one?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
so
yes.
You do this in 2-player. Okay, and what would happen was there's a lot of instances in this where you can effectively jump to a lower level and skip minutes of the stage.
Yes.
So, and there's checkpoints all over the place, and if you land it, you're checkpointed there. It doesn't like say that you missed checkpoints previously. So we would basically like, I'm gonna jump, and if one person jumps, then the second one has to jump because either you like are gonna miss out on a ton of time and the whole thing's over for you, or you miss and the other one's way ahead. But the thing is, we would continuously miss. Like, we would only make it like 30% of the time. Right. But when we did, we were like, oh! I know, and there's like 4 or 5 instances throughout this one track where you could do it. And, and I don't want to mean to translate on that, but the battle version of this, it was just loads of fun. And like breaking the game. And there were so many types of stages too, like the grind rail stages for one. There's also, like the whole game starts with this amazing opening where you are basically surfboarding or like really skateboarding with no wheels down a huge city with like all sorts of destructible things along the way. A semi the size of the street starts destroying everything behind you. It's intense.
It really is, and it really was a statement of what I think Sonic really was at the time. Really in your face, not so concerned with like the lore,
more about speed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if the 2D games were actually about acceleration and trying to maintain momentum, the 3D games were showing that they were about not only like figuring out the 3D design, but more so like use the 3D space to put a bunch of springs to launch you quickly to the next thing, so you are never losing your momentum. Even though you can very easily in this, if you like click the side of a wall, all of a sudden you will go from like 100 to 0.
Yeah, and that's another part of the thing too. I don't know if it was a GameCube issue or not, but I remember playing the game, like you said, a lot, and you can just really clip easily into the geometry of the world and just get stuck.
I've seen speedrunners basically have to exploit this constantly and like play the levels outside of the bounds for like half the time.
Yeah.
It's like watching a Metroid Prime speedrun. It's just kind of more disappointing than anything.
I think with the Dreamcast version of this, much like the Dreamcast version of Sonic Adventure 1, it's a better built game for the Dreamcast version, but you don't have all the extras basically.
Still, you also we should mention some big stuff about this. You could choose if you want to be the heroes or the antagonists.
Yes,
aside from the introduction of Shadow the Hedgehog, we are also being able to play as Tails and Dr. Eggman in giant mechs in their own unique levels. And Knuckles and Rouge the Bat, who is also starting here, I think.
Yes.
I'm not a huge Sonic guy.
But, this is her start.
They are both in the treasure-seeking level, similar to last time.
Uh-huh.
So there was like a bunch of variety if you were just playing hero and we're just playing villain. And eventually those two stories, once you beat them both, they will combine and you'll be able to face like basically the true final boss of the game.
Yes.
So it's a really cool, well-designed thing. And also at the end of it, you unlock a Green Hill Zone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can go back and play a retro level. So I really like it. It's a great GameCube game. It's another one of those early ones that I did happen to have at the time.
Yeah, and I can understand why people are asking for a Sonic Adventure 3, although I don't think we're ever going to get anything like that, even if they tried to make it.
Right. Honestly, I think Frontiers is a great step in the right direction for the Sonic team.
That's what it looks like,
compared to, like, Forces and Sonic Boom and all the, like, what are you guys doing, Sega? Jumping back to Adventure, I think, is the way to go. And Frontiers is the closest to Adventure. It just looks so barren. And Adventure just pops. There is so much everywhere. And maybe this is just personally, I want a more well-refined area to explore and to zip through, as opposed to just having a big open sandbox.
I agree. No, I get what you're saying.
That's the difference between Frontiers and Adventure.
Because I feel you get more of a sense of diversity and like just different locales and stuff in a non-open world
also,
thing.
The game gets to shine a bit more because the developers know what you're going to see and where you're going to be experiencing and what you're going to think at each moment. And they can curtail the game to fit exactly what you're trying to do and how to play it, as opposed to an open map, which you don't know which direction anyone's going.
Yeah, because
it takes ages to build something like that.
Yeah, and they also have to try to make it visually and mechanically cohesive.
I know, that's just tough.
So, yeah.
That's just tough. And Frontiers even has these weird, like, floating guardrails all over the place, just in space. Like, and you just have to accept it because, well, they don't know what direction you're coming from or what you're doing. So, I'm hoping they're figuring it out, but boy, it's taken a while for them. I think this is, oh boy, I don't want to piss anybody off. This is probably the last, like, really good Sonic 3D game.
Yeah, Generations.
I hear good things about Colors.
Yeah, Colors is really good.
Not the port, though. The port.
No, get the Wii version.
Yeah.
Generations was good. I really did enjoy Generations.
Well, yeah, if we count. Yeah, sure.
But,
I was thinking, like, the main, like, made to be a 3D.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd say this is probably the last good
We might
3D.
not be talking about Sonic after this.
There's not much I could add, honestly.
But anyway,
I've played every GameCube game of Sonic, and it's like, we're fine.
Yeah, we're fine. But anyway, we have other consoles, and good lord, we are already not going to be good for time. But this year, I'm telling you, this year is huge.
Yeah,
we're moving to the PS2. We will be coming back to Nintendo later. But
this is when the good PS2 games come out.
Yeah. Last year, we were like, well, just to be nice, we'll talk about Armored Core, which actually just came out the week that we're recording this. And I'm hearing a lot of good things about that, so that's good.
I did too, yeah. And I hope that FromSoft follows the trend and actually does more with this sort of series going forward.
Yeah, and it doesn't just become like, well, we're the Souls guys now, and doing that, which is fine. I mean, I love their Souls stuff, but they made other games, you know.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that Armored Core got some love there.
Exactly.
But anyway, PS2. We have Ico.
Ico!
It's the first one that Zach wanted to put on this list, and
oh my god,
wonder why.
I love Ico.
So Ico is made by the same studio that will later bring us Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian.
Yep.
Which is why I'm not a big fan.
Yeah. Which is why I'm a huge fan, honestly.
And that's why I want to let you do the talking here, very briefly, because boy, we gotta pick up speed.
So Ico is an action-adventure game where you play as a kid who's trapped in a castle because he was born with horns. And the whole goal of the game is to try to escape and to take a girl who's also wanted to escape with you. It's almost more like an experience than a game.
Right, which their other games will reflect.
Yeah, because the whole conceit, and one of the biggest things that really stood out to me, especially at the time in 2001, you have to hold the girl's hand throughout the whole thing as you're escorting her out of the castle. And honest to God, just being able to hold down the R1 button just to let your hand out and she'll come up, that really stands out because I'm like, okay, so this isn't going to be this big, like, combat-focused, like, sword this guy, arrow this guy over here.
Yeah.
It's more of, like, just this kind of slow-paced, methodical kind of experience.
It's a journey.
Yes,
we have
exactly.
tons of indie games that are just inspired on giving the player an emotion and not so much like a fun time playing the game.
Exactly.
And that's honestly where my problems with these developers come from. I want to have more fun when I play something, and they focus so much on the emotion, which can it works really well for some people. I wasn't feeling it in the ones that I played, just because the gameplay was so frustrating to me. But like people would complain about Ico, saying like, "Oh, well, you have to drag this person around." If you think of it like dragging this person around, sure, it'll be frustrating because you're supposed to. At this age, you got to think of this age in games.
Yes.
This looks very great graphically.
It really does.
That's the thing. We got to remember the age, and you got to remember that you are trying to imagine you are this person and living in this world and under these circumstances, and then you can go through their emotional journey. And the emotional journey is the game, not so much what you're yanking a person around to get to.
Exactly. Right. And I will say, at the beginning, you literally are dragging this poor girl through because you can't communicate with each other. You speak two completely different languages. Yeah. And so it's a lot of these little things that add up to, I think, a really overall good experience. If you're going at this from a very mechanical, like the combat, you're just kind of almost locked into a room and you're using a giant stick to fight off the shadow monsters that are trying to take the girl away from you. And then once everyone's gone, then you just move on. Mm-hmm. The platforming can be a little bit wonky because, again, early PS2, and they built a whole map that doesn't really load. I mean, everything is already there.
Right.
It can feel a little awkward, but for what it is, I think it's more than the sum of its parts. And I think that, for me, that's what does it. And one of the other quick things I want to add, the way that this game looks, since you brought that up, apparently this game was a huge influence on the visual style of Twilight Princess.
I can see that.
Yeah, exactly. And
the brown filter.
The brown filter and the bloom.
Mm-hmm. The bloom and the brown filter.
Yep.
Well, and back in this day, you remember, we're jumping from the N64. These are not things that they really had access to. I mean, of course, if they could have laid a brown filter on things, but the idea of the brown filter was to make things look more worn and realistic.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's not just brown. I mean, when you actually look at, say, like a kid's like play school playset, it's all primary colors. If you put like a filter over that and you changed it into, put like textures on things and made like a little bit of an orange tint to it, all of a sudden, even that very blocky, I'm thinking like N64, but I want you to imagine something in real space, it will start looking more refined, even though you didn't really have to model new stuff into it. Right. It was an easy way to get around making stuff look better than it actually was. It was an illusion.
Yeah, exactly. Not only was it trying to cover up some technical shortcomings of the PS2.
As does Bloom. Bloom does the same.
Yeah,
but I think Bloom was just the new effect, and people were just like, "Whoa,
we can make light actually bloom out from little spaces? Oh my god!"
Yeah, and more anymore, it's like a dirty word to say bloom. God. People hate their bloom.
Well, because developers just beat it to the ground, basically.
They did.
But right. I would say that Ico still holds up in a lot of regards, honestly.
I think it's an important start to see games like this.
Yeah.
This, as I'd mentioned, these aren't my favorite of this developer, but I do appreciate games that are emotional journeys.
That
will come later.
Especially for the era it came out in.
So I noticed one little mistake in our list, and I'm going to interject. We're going to talk about one Xbox game. I accidentally put it on our PS2 list. So one Xbox game. We mentioned we're not Xbox people, but I think this is a super important thing to talk about here.
Absolutely super
We're
important.
talking about Halo.
Halo Combat Evolved.
Halo.
Baby.
If I walked up to basically anybody who had any semblance of video games and I say, okay, think Xbox, tell me one game, they're going to say Halo.
Yeah.
Even to this day, even though Halo is kind of not really any, okay, this will be more definitive. Halo is nowhere near the standing that it had back in this time period, especially with Halo 2 was really what did it.
Exactly.
But Halo is still the progenitor of that multiplayer first-person shooter, puts the multiple split screen, put multiple players together in large maps, and of course there's a campaign to play through.
Absolutely, yeah,
and it's a really good campaign too.
Mm-hmm.
But putting multiple players together, giving them access to a bunch of items and vehicles and stuff, just plopped in a big map and let them shoot each other
on console.
Mm-hmm. And this was not only like an enormous like seller, but it also was something that started this huge boom and kind of made its own divergent genre of first-person shooters.
It absolutely did, because the big thing that this game, on a mechanics level, I think that it added was the twin stick aspect.
Yes.
You strafed and went backwards and forwards with one stick and looked around with the other.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't do that before.
Yeah, and I remember playing that for the first time thinking, I could not get used to this. Like, this is so confused. Like, how's my brain supposed to do this? And of course, nowadays, it's second nature.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and I was just getting shot by my friends constantly, but I could still, like, even though I was not enjoying, they were just the kind of people who would rather not teach you how to play the game and make it a little bit harder for you.
No, this is how you learn. You got to learn by getting scrubbed
into
the ground.
Didn't work. They just wanted a body to shoot and laugh at, and they like learned where all the respawn points were. But still, like, this is just the progenitor of that kind of the Overwatch, you know, the Fortnite. All those things are coming from this point where you're making first-person shooters a multiplayer group effort. You're either like all against each other, you're with each other, you have teams. There's all sorts of stuff that you could do with that, and this concept all really, for the most part, is coming from Halo.
And not to mention, aside from the Dreamcast and what it was doing, we have this game to also thank for Xbox Live. And its success and its subscription model, which
is probably the best in the industry.
Yeah.
In terms of like the game libraries and stuff that you have access to with Xbox.
Yeah.
Like just yesterday before recording this, Sea of Stars launched.
Yeah.
And you could play it for free on Xbox.
Yep.
So even though I do kind of pick on Xbox sometimes, it's like, well, there's like no exclusives. Why would I get that console? It's like the one that you don't have a gaming computer, right?
Yeah.
They have some really great deals, and they're trying to figure out, like, they know that, and they're trying to entice people as opposed to monopolizing the industry. Let's get back to the PS2. Because the PS2, home consoles, is really where this is at. We're talking about what we can play this year. And honestly, I wouldn't even say play Halo this year. We're really talking about it because, like, holy crap, this is going to change things.
It did.
Yeah, and it did. And not so much like, let's play it. If we're talking about let's play it, let's play some Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty.
That's right, son.
Oh my goodness. Zach, this is big.
It is huge.
And it's going to start a trend of sequels that Hideo Kojima did not want to make, but it was forced to make.
Basically, yeah. This was supposed to be the end of the series.
I know. Well, each game was supposed to be the end of the series, so I mean, that's nothing new. And actually, maybe that's better for their writing, because like when you expect this one was going to be the end, you know, you kind of make each game a crescendo instead of making each one like, oh, imply the next thing, even though the end of this implies the next thing, but Kojima intentionally never followed up on it.
Yeah.
Just to make it like, that was the point.
Exactly.
Of the game. But funnily enough, this game was heavily advertised as only showing you playing as Solid Snake, sneaking around on new PS2 graphics, and that's what everybody wanted.
Oh, it was amazing.
With Hideo Kojima. And then the game launches, and you play as Solid Snake, you beat the tanker mission, and surprise, you're playing as this creep Raiden who has girlfriend problems for the entire game, and it has nothing to do with Snake anymore, and Snake's doing the real busy work out in the background. That did not go over well for people.
For me, it's just the fact that this is such a multi-level, like, experience.
Yes.
Like, you can just look at it at a very surface level and think, oh man, I don't get to play as Snake all the time. This sucks. Why do I get to have to play as Raiden? And also, when you look at it, you're like, okay, why are we basically regurgitating the same story from Metal Gear Solid 1 into this? But it plays with the idea of what it means to be a sequel.
Yes.
And how, in the worst case scenario, it could go.
Yes, in the expectations of the player, but it's very meta, because then on the other level, it's also happening in the game and the world. It's supposed to be very strange. Like, why is there suddenly another cyborg ninja showing up at like the same time there was one last time?
Yeah.
Why is there another Foxhoundy unit happening again? And very similar events start playing out, and I don't want to spoil it. You can actually watch not only my review of this, but my entire Let's Play of this game, shameless plug, squared. And it is an outstanding game. The plot twists are new and interesting, but it's also still keeping on that meta level of being the same thing for the second time.
And even being, aside from being meta, just what it's also saying too with its own story and what we have to expect from an information age with like unrestricted access to just anything. The dangers involved in that, and I'm just like, this is 2001.
I know. It's almost like this guy, Hideo Kojima, effectively in the ending thesis of this game, was writing a huge essay on the, like, warning people of what's going to happen, like a doomsday prophecy of the age of the internet and free information and how AI can go out of control. And in 2023, it is more relevant than ever.
Yep.
And he was right on the money. And I'm sure back in the day, people were like, that's a little much. Come on. There's no way. Brilliant people can prophesy some insane things. And yeah, man, there's a lot to that. And weirdly enough, towards the end, when a certain character is going out of control, I don't want to spoil anything for you, they start mentioning some interesting things. One thing I want to mention, because I'm actually playing this game right now, is they say an introduction mission line that Colonel Campbell says in the beginning of Metal Gear Ghost Babel.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Invade Fortress Galload, which is Ghost Babel. Now, Ghost Babel, we didn't mention it, but it was a Japanese Metal Gear Solid Game Boy Color game.
Yep.
And it was called Metal Gear Ghost Babel. And when it was localized, Konami being complete doofuses, called it Metal Gear Solid for Game Boy Color. Which, of course, it's not. It's a totally different game. And it's technically non-canon, but it's super weird to see that it was, officially referenced in this game.
Yeah.
Meaning it may all be like a simulation inside of this as a training op or something.
Yeah.
Super weird. But, the Metal Gear series is insane, so... Anyway, and since I'm currently playing it, I didn't want to pass by because it was technically in there, and it's so weird, so weird. But Kojima's a brilliant man. The script alone for Metal Gear Solid 2, have you seen it? It's printed. It's like this thick.
I know.
And this, if you're listening, it's like 6 inches. It was enormous.
Yeah, it's basically the span from the tip of your thumb to the tip of your pinky. Basically.
Right. I'm pretty sure. I remember seeing it. It was thicker than a full Bible. It was gargantuan.
Oh my gosh.
So moving on from here, PS2. We still have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So
absolutely.
Grand Theft Auto is making a grand jump to the PS2.
And oh my God, is it a huge jump? Not only for Grand Theft Auto, but for video games.
Yeah, and mechanically, yeah. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most important games to come to the PS2.
Yep. Have you played
yes,
this one?
I did dabble a little bit in this.
Okay.
I played this, now that you ask, I played
Uh-huh.
So I played this little game to myself because I was a little intimidated. I didn't know the console well, so I didn't know the controls that well.
Yeah.
So I tried to make my own fun with it while a friend was lending me the controller, saying, do something funny, because the game is so open and free, and you know, the cops will come, and you have star rankings, like before.
Yeah.
But there's like so many factors. The world's all open. There's so many things to it. And what I decided to do was imitate him. And I said, I'm going to get you arrested by doing nothing wrong. And he ran track. And so he was just jogging. So I would just jog down the sides of the street and try to just bump into people that I shouldn't be bumping into, and see how long it would take before I would get fines and start like having cops chase after me, and then just running from the cops, and that alone was a felony. I would just like keep getting worse from effectively doing nothing. But no, there's an actual game here.
There actually is. So the thing that this game does that is so phenomenal is its open world design.
Yeah.
You have Liberty City, but it's sectioned off into different boroughs, and as the story progresses, you actually get access to the other two main boroughs. And I was gonna say, they just basically say, okay, here's your mission, here's the toys, just finish the mission.
Toys as in guns, vehicles, pretty much anything. One of my favorite parts about this game, actually, and SSX does the same thing, an in-game radio.
Yeah.
Where you can listen to, now I'm sure they still do this today in different facets, but I love this. This is like one of the most immersive things you can do in a game. Like Marvel Spider-Man did something similar to this too.
Okay.
Where you can listen in live while you're playing your game, just like Grand Theft Auto. So you just steal someone's car, you hop in it, you are listening to whatever music they were listening to.
Exactly.
And if you're listening to the radio, you are listening to whatever the news is. You're listening to them talk about sports or whatever thing is happening in the world. And it just gets you right into it. It's so cool.
Yeah, honest to God, that's one of my favorite aspects. Now that you mention it,
it's such a dumb little thing, but I love that.
The talk show that they have in there, Laszlo. Oh my God, that is one of my favorite things in any video game.
I know.
And the fact that that's like they kept him on and they actually kept putting him into further Grand Theft Auto games is so cool.
The biggest thing about this, though, is now that we're in the PS2 era and games are looking much more realistic, now games like Grand Theft Auto are really scaring people. This was starting the craze, now getting into the political sphere, even though it's completely bullcrap claiming that video games are turning our kids violent, and they are going out and they are shooting people, or they're going to go buy some guns and they're going to go attack people, which we could have a whole discussion on such an event, but of course, we all know, we are informed individuals to know that this is completely bogus. There have been so many studies proving that this is completely false, but unfortunately, Grand Theft Auto kind of regurgitated a ton of that fear that the Mortal Kombat Night Trap thing started.
Yep.
And people got, this was the game they all pointed out, saying, look, it's literally incentivizing kids to steal cars, to wreck them into real people, and to shoot people, and go rob banks and all that stuff, because that's what the game is.
Counterpoint to those people, why are you letting your kids play that?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're that mad about it.
This is mostly Karens going into toy stores and being mad that they're seeing these games, but even though, at this point, we have the ESRB, and you're right, it was their fault.
Yep.
So, shelving that, we move on. We have so many freaking games to talk about.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Devil May Cry.
Devil May Cry.
Devil May Cry, featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series.
It happened.
What's funny is this is sort of kind of a spin-off of Resident Evil.
It is.
It was supposed to be a Resident Evil game at first.
It was supposed to be Resident Evil 4.
Mm-hmm. And when you and when you play the original Devil May Cry on PS2, which I have, it certainly feels like it. It is like you're playing a game where you go into the Resident Evil mansion, but instead you have like hack and slash and shooty shoot abilities, where it's more action based than it was run really slowly with the awful camera in the tank controls and try to I think you still have no, you have twin stick at this point, right?
You do. I think, if I remember correctly.
Well, not twin stick, but you run with the analog.
Yes.
But you still have the fixed camera positions from Resident Evil.
Yeah.
And you have the hokey puzzles and all that stuff that you have to do, respawning enemies in areas, and it's rough. It doesn't age very well, but it is definitely a progenitor of a huge series of those 3D. I'm gonna just call them the hack and slash, even though you really are shooting for the most part in Devil May Cry.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, this is more like one of those spectacle action games, like a character action game.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like a lot of the same guys who would work on this would eventually move on to found Platinum, and we would get Bayonetta out of this. So without this game and the Resi 4 development hell that went through.
Yeah. Maybe for the best.
Yeah, I think for the best.
Yeah, for the best, because it ended up being one of the best games ever. If development hell does that to a game, okay. Yeah. Sure. I am of the opinion that I would much rather wait even years for a game to be much, much better than it releasing in an unfinished state or in a halfway finished state.
I just kind of want things to be a little bit more compressed.
Yes.
Less bloat.
A little both.
Yeah.
A little both of those things.
Yeah.
So we can move on though.
Yeah, exactly.
So oh my goodness, this may be one of the biggest games for the PS2. We're talking about Final Fantasy X.
That's right.
This is one of Kim's favorite games ever.
I don't blame her.
This I have reviewed, so you can also check, and we can refer to that, so we don't have to spend too much time on this one.
Shameless plug.
But this is the full color jump to the PS2. The graphics are pushing this thing to the edge really early on. Almost full voice acting in a giant JRPG with a whole new battle combat system that still feels like Final Fantasy. The sphere grids they're so unique, but it still fits the world perfectly.
Yes.
All the new, of course, the models and animations and everything. Oh my gosh, the pre-done cutscenes, the pre-rendered stuff. Oh my goodness, wow. Even the story alone, the music. This is Final Fantasy at its best.
I would say pretty much. Yeah, I think this is actually the last great Final Fantasy.
Oh yeah, if we're making a Final Fantasy tier list, this alongside others, I would put up an S. Is what I'm saying. It's up there.
Yeah. Because I was to say, in order to accommodate for that, because it's I love this game too. Its story is really cool. It just one of the things I'm like, why would you just let me name my character when my character is actually not necessarily the main character, but it's everyone talks at me and he talks with them. Why not just let me
you could name Tidus?
Yes.
Why?
I
guess
know.
it was just a thing from their older games where they were trying to retain it. Not sure what people are nostalgic for. Are people nostalgic for naming, their brother's dad and sister as the characters in their Final Fantasy game?
I was going to say, my rival is still named Butt Munch to this day. But it's like that's
well,
one
Seymour kind of is a butt munch, isn't he?
Really? Oh my God, he is. I don't.
I'm not a fan of Seymour.
But yeah,
if anything, that might kind of pull the game down a bit. But it's still it's such a great spectacle, and it is one of the coolest things you can play on the PS2.
It absolutely is.
To this day, even with the whole library.
Oh yeah, no, the HD remasters are easily available. So if you want to try it, and if you want to, for whatever reason, play 10-2.
They go on, for whatever reason, they go on a lot of sales too. And
they do.
They are bundled too. So definitely pick those up if you get a chance.
Exactly.
So PS2, we're also moving on to Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy.
Oh my God, the first Naughty Dog game on the PS2. And holy crap, did they take their platforming chops and actually make such a phenomenal first huge open world-ish 3D platformer.
Yeah, before they kind of abandoned the 3D platforming genre and just went to more of cinematics.
Well, yeah,
the Uncharted series.
Exactly. This is the start of them really relying on cutscenes.
It's really a blend almost of Uncharted and Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, it very much is, because it's all the cutscenes with all the NPCs and the major story events kind of get in the way, or start to feel like they might get in the way. Yeah. But there are but at least they have that little floating camera that one of the characters talks to you. So, but it's the platforming and the gameplay itself that I think is just the thing that makes this game stand out even today.
Totally.
It's just basically another version of Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64, where you're going around, you're collecting the different precursor energy cells to get further and further in the game. And you have such a wide variety of moves at your disposal. And not only that, but it was a huge technical showpiece for the PS2, showing off squash and stretch character animation.
We got a little of that on N64 because people were trying to do the cartoony look.
Yeah.
Not enough were doing it on PS2 other than Jak and Daxter, because so many like Halo and Grand Theft Auto, they were trying to do the realistic.
Yes.
Even Final Fantasy, which was that fantasy blend, was going for realistic. Well, not a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, and they do a phenomenal job with that.
Yeah, it looks really good.
There are times where the game does kind of throw something at you and you just go, how am I supposed to do this?
Yeah.
But if that's
got its quirks.
Yeah, but if that's the only thing I have to say against it, then I think that's the mark of a really good game.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to say something a little scary at first.
Okay.
But you guys are going to be okay with it, because we're only halfway through the games we have on this list. Now, I know you're looking at the time oh my God, but hold on here. The other half of these we're going to be seeing much faster, because we organize these by console, and we're kind of towards the end of the PS2s, and for the most part the rest of the stuff we have on here we don't have as much to talk about.
Right.
So for example, we're actually going to be moving I interjected, we have Max Payne, which is also PS2 and PC.
Yes.
So we don't have as much to say about this.
Yeah.
But more so it happens this year.
It happens, and the biggest thing that happens is that it introduces bullet time to video games.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Yep.
And it's a really good noir story. It's cool.
Yeah. I like The Matrix.
Yep.
So
I do too.
Silent Hill 2. Now this one we want to probably spend a little bit more time on. Now I want to play through all of 1 before I get to this one, and I'm still in the middle of 1, and it's wonky camera, as we mentioned before, still getting me sick, but boy, it is so tempting to just jump into Silent Hill 2 because of how big this game is.
You don't have to play 1 to understand 2 at all. There's nothing really linking the 2. I get it, though. Yeah, because one of the things, too, is I never really got into Silent Hill much as a kid. I was more of a Resident Evil person.
Me too. This was something I discovered that I had missed later.
Yes.
And wow, this is some people consider the best horror game ever made.
I kind of agree with what I.
It's a psychological horror thing. The first one, from my understanding, is more so you on a journey to try and save your daughter, who is lost in this. How do you even describe Silent Hill?
Basically, an eldritch abomination of a town, on the cusp of 2 dimensions, basically.
Yeah, extremely foggy.
Yes.
So hard to see. All sorts of disturbing monstrosities always clamoring to get you, and you're sneaking your way through the whole thing. And the second one is more of this deep, dark journey into psychosis.
Yeah, it's a character study of James Sutherland.
Yes.
Or Sunderland, yeah. And that's the thing that I think sets it apart. It mixes in horror with the thematic elements to craft a cohesive whole. And that's what I really like about it. I want to try to play this game before the remake comes out. because I'm like,
I do have that fair comparison.
Yeah, and I do
you
not
never know
trust,
what's going to happen.
And I do not trust Konami or
that's the thing.
Or whatever, with whatever nonsense they want to do. So
man, if they did originally have Kojima, as was rumored, if not leaked
for Silent Hill,
then I would have probably trusted it. But now I don't know what's going on with them. But I guess in a similar horror vein on the PS2, we also have Fatal Frame.
Fatal Frame.
So this is a really cool other horror series where throughout the entire series, I guess if I'm going to try and sum them up, you basically have Japanese schoolgirl goes into spooky town with a camera that has the ability to reveal and damage ghosts.
Yep, the camera obscura. Yep, and it's a fun survival game because of the fact of where you go. There's not a lot of like film rolls because obviously why would there be? They're like either abandoned mansions, dead towns, and stuff like that. It felt
like trying to find a save inkwell in Resident Evil.
Right.
It's so.
But the thing I like is that camera rolls are limited, so you have to be careful with what you engage in. It's like in Resident Evil. But yeah, I mean, it's basically the Kemco or Tecmo version of their take on a Silent Hill. The series is still going today. The 6th game just came out not that long ago.
And I think we just got a port of the exclusive Wii U game.
Yes, we just got a port of the 4th game. Yes. So it's a Nintendo franchise now. Strangely enough.
I know.
So
yeah, weirdly enough, and because of that, it got a Spirit and Smash Brothers. We're gonna reference that again.
Yep.
I remember seeing that, like, what?
Yeah, I know.
Not Silent. I was like, a Fatal Frame. Oh, and an assist trophy.
Oh my God, that's right.
I forgot about this. She'll actually come out and like start taking photos and damage the other guys.
The reticle for the camera that's on screen.
That's so cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Anyway, we got to move on, and we're gonna try and blast through these a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
We would have mentioned like Onimusha. Happens this year, PS2. So kind of like in that same. This really is the hack and slash Resident Evil, if I'm gonna say it like that.
It's more like an adventure game than anything else. It's not really so much like a survival game in the fact like
I'm thinking of fixed cameras.
That's
I guess
because
that's really
I think this was originally supposed to also be kind of an idea for like a Resident Evil spin-off.
Right.
Which was supposed to take place in like Edo.
Because this is also
Japan.
Capcom.
Yes. Yeah. The guy who created Mega Man, or was credited as being the father of Mega Man, directed this game. And so that you can tell because there's like all these really weird and quirky moments and characters and stuff.
Yeah,
it's a fun game. I don't know how you can play it today. I think. Oh wait, no. There's a remaster on the Switch.
Really?
Of the first game. Yes.
Cool.
So there you go.
Man, the Switch is saving so many consoles.
It really is, and I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, when the Switch first came out and it was just like a few exclusive, I was like, is it really that great? And man, how many things you can play on this one console, and how many things it is bringing back. Man, it is.
And it being a haven for the indie scene.
Yeah, it's such a great system. Such a great system. I really hope if they make another version, it's going to be backwards compatible with that eShop and library.
I hope so.
So quickly moving on, we have Shadow Hearts for PS2.
Yep. This is basically now because a lot of horror games actually came out around this time. Now that I've been thinking about it,
and with some serious competition too.
Yeah,
there's some really good ones right there.
But Shadow Hearts is a horror RPG, believe it or not. It takes place during World War I, and the thing that separates it from a lot of its contemporaries is the Judgment Ring system. So it's kind of like Mario, the Mario RPG games where you time your button presses.
Yeah, I love that.
But this one kind of personifies it in the fact that it's a disc, and there's like different areas you need to hit the X button on in order to do like a full attack.
Like an old rotary phone.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly. And so...
our audience knows what that is, right? You all definitely used an old rotary phone, right?
I did.
You have Google, look it up.
But those are the two big things that set it up. It's its setting, and its plot inherent in the fact of it's like a supernatural World War II or World War I game, and the Judgment Ring system. It's really fun. It's stuck still on the PS2, so I don't know how you could possibly play it anymore.
To be fair, even emulating PS2 is really tough.
It's
a shame. I'm sorry, because there's no good way to try and revitalize something like that.
Yeah.
So I think we are finally done with PS2 for this year. And
I believe so.
Wow, look at the PS2 this year.
Ooh,
and this was just the highlights, man.
Yeah,
PS2.
Exactly.
So if we're going to move on, we're going to get to Return to Castle Wolfenstein. We're on the PC now.
Exactly. Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Have you ever played any of the Wolfensteins or this one in particular?
I've just seen them online of people playing snippets.
So this is way before like Wolfenstein became like a household name again with like the New Order and like the new Colossus and all that
I'm gonna
stuff.
say that's when it really resurged fully.
So this is the one that uses the Quake 3 engine, which was like a really powerful engine at the time from id, and it's basically a return to form where it's a pulpy adventure kind of World War II era where the Nazis are trying to resurrect the spirit of a dead evil guy from like the 900s.
It's Wolfenstein.
Yeah, you're shooting Nazis and sneaking around. The thing that I like about it is that the levels are pretty open and you can approach them in different ways. However, you're just killing Nazis.
Yeah,
is the big
part.
It's really fun. It's on sale a lot on Steam, and it runs surprisingly really well even today. That's good. Yeah, really good. Okay, give it a shot.
We have another very weird PC game next, Black and White. We are not talking about Pokemon.
Nope.
This is a weird God simulator game.
Yep, this is from Peter Molyneux, the same guy who would eventually give us Halo, and the same guy who gave us a ton of other games.
What do you mean eventually give us Halo?
Or not Halo, Fable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what?
Don't worry. Hey, look. If this is Peter Molyneux, if the guy could somehow claim that he was the one who helped create Halo, he probably would have said that at some point.
Yeah, right.
But what it is, like you said, it's a God game where you basically not only help a civilization come to life, but you basically also control an avatar of yourself as the god. And they interact with the people. So you can get this avatar to basically be a saint and actually help your people, grow crops, accept offerings. Or you could basically slap him around, throw him, and basically turn him into the devil and basically cause nothing but havoc on your town and havoc for everyone else in the world.
It was a game about its morality, black and white,
yeah,
literally.
Exactly.
It was about a good and evil. And I believe you also were at odds with an evil deity, like a counter god, is that right?
Yeah, you were basically at odds with a rival god who was also on the rise, and basically you're just in a race to not become irrelevant and forgotten. Yeah. And no matter how you go about it, that's basically the whole goal, and it's really cool. There was a sequel that did a lot of things better, but it didn't have the atmosphere or the cheek that this one does. So, take your pick. I don't know where you can get this one currently, but...
Good. It may be on Steam. I don't know.
I'd have to look it up later. But anyway...
But I don't know. Well, still sticking on the PC, and we want to spend a little bit more time on this one, is RuneScape.
RuneScape.
So...
Oh my god.
This you can still play.
You can still play. Uh-huh. So, I hope you all know what RuneScape is. This was big when I was in middle school.
This... I think is still the record for the largest massively online multiplayer game.
I think so. I think it was still in, I think it's still in the Guinness Book of World Records that this is like
300 million or something.
Yes, registered users. Yeah. So
it's enormous.
It is enormous. So it is a free MMO, and the thing that set it apart from every other MMO at the time, like EverQuest and Asheron's Call and all that, is that it was playable in browser. You did not have to download anything. And it was so lightweight that it could run on Internet Explorer and stuff.
Graphically, it wasn't much to look at.
That's not the point.
No, it wasn't.
It's you were going on with your friends, fighting goblins, mining ore, smelting new weapons, and following little quest lines. And if you really wanted to, you could actually pay for a subscription for a month or monthly. And you could actually access more of the game as it was added over the years.
That's fun.
Uh-huh. And even now, you have two different versions of the game. You have the live version, RuneScape 3, and you have RuneScape Classic, which is a build from 2007, which basically is an offshoot of the same exact game from 2001.
The browser? Oh, that's so cool.
Yes. Uh-huh. It's a lot of fun. I played it for, maybe 20 to 30 hours to relive some nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's not my kind of game anymore. It's a little too simplistic. I've seen the light with quote unquote with Final Fantasy 14, but but honestly though,
well, what is Final Fantasy 14 without RuneScape?
Exactly. Yeah.
This is making. I mean, sure, MMOs exist before this, but this is the boom.
Exactly, especially for younger kids. I mean, this is basically what got me.
It's so accessible. If it's free, it runs in browser, anybody could play it.
All you had to do was just convince your parents not to use the phone for an hour or so you could make some progress.
Oh, God.
I do not miss those days.
No.
Oh, my God. But,
I'm sorry, all the kids who need to get off my lawn don't even know what a dial-up sounds like.
Oh my god, you're lucky.
Yeah, you are.
But
it's not something to be envious of at all.
But the core of it is really fun still. It still holds up in that regard, and I tried the new version of the game. It's fine. And even going back to Classic, I'm like, this is kind of hard to go back to for me personally, but for other people, they really get into it.
Well, sometimes, people are nostalgic for just pure mechanics.
Yes.
And, like, personally, I will tell you one I'm susceptible to. Even though I have Planet Coaster, I want to go back and play Roller Coaster Tycoon more so. And it's just, even though I know it is more invasive, like, it's not quite as efficient, there is something about that old system, and I'm sure this is the same with RuneScape, that people just want to be there.
I can understand.
It's like a place that you get to be at.
Absolutely.
It literally is. It's an MMO. It's designed for that. So we have one more PC game, and it is Serious Sam.
Serious Sam, the first encounter. Do you know anything about the Serious Sam games?
Nope.
So, okay, this is basically the first, what I can think of as a game that could be called an arena shooter. So it's like one of those games where it's a first-person shooter from a small team in Croatia, and the whole point is that you go into these giant levels, and I'm talking they're massive. And the whole point is, like, enemies just keep spawning in. You have to clear them all out until they're all gone. And this is a low-budget game, so it's like they had to figure out ways to try to really extend the playtime and to, like, really help, I guess, carry the gunplay along. And it's really fun. It's a really solid shooter. And it's just, there's a joke about these games where it's like, it's basically, the game is only hold down D to go backwards and just hold left click just to fight. Which is, in its own kind of brain-dead kind of way, it's really fun. And even on a higher thinking level, especially when they start throwing different enemy varieties at you all together, like the Clear, who are these skeletons who fire chain balls at you, and they will jump to you, and also the suicide bombers, who are headless humans with like 2 cartoon grenades in their hands, screaming as they fly at you. You kind of really have to learn how to juggle the enemy types and what guns to use to best do that. I think that's where the games really shine. They're not for everyone, especially if you're used to something like we were saying, like with Halo or Call of Duty, where they feel a little bit more involved, but the series is still going on today, actually.
A lot of the first-person shooters were, or rather, they're even still during this era called Doom clones.
Yeah.
They were, the Doom clones at the time were all just offshoots of Doom.
Basically,
and what else can we do with that system?
Yeah, so it took like the gunplay.
Like Halo is one direction of like, how do we make it like a multiplayer group effort?
Yeah.
And this is more like push it to the extreme of pit someone in a room against hordes.
Hordes, yeah, exactly. So, a lot of fun. Very easily, you can very easily obtain it on Steam, which is where I played it. There's actually HD versions, which run a little bit better and look a lot nicer. So,
that's good.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about one arcade game.
Yeah.
And does this say it's only in Japan?
It was originally released in Japan only as an arcade game. We're talking about Ikaruga.
Ikaruga.
Yep. What do you know about Ikaruga?
Isn't this a bullet hell shooter?
It is.
And I'm pretty sure, like, you are, like, the only thing that's, like, black and white, and, like, all the bullets are colors or something like that?
Correct. So it's one of those weird treasure games where you have two different versions of yourself. There is a light energy and a dark energy side to yourself. When you are in one say, like, you're on the light energy side of things, and you're firing the white and blue energy spheres, they do more damage to the dark energy enemies, but you are susceptible to dying in one hit from a dark energy beam, whereas if it's the reverse is true.
It's like it's got weaknesses and
strengths. Yeah.
Yeah, there's strengths too. It's almost kind of like the system that I would be more familiar with that I did play all the way through, which was the Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth game, where you would basically shift between. Now, technically, that was an offshoot of a system they played on Synchronicity Prologue. It was a Shin Megami Tensei series.
Yes.
But it was just like a Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. But you would like switch elements, and you would like take none of one, and you would be susceptible to the other one.
This is
exactly
exactly
it's the same thing, but in like a bullet hell.
Yep. It's hard as nails. It was eventually released for the Dream.
Oh, it's an arcade. They want them quarters, man.
Oh, hey, they didn't even bring down the difficulty when they released it on the Dreamcast and the GameCube.
Of course they didn't.
Why would they? It's a treasure game. You're ruining the experience of a treasure game if you do that.
God.
But it's still easily available.
How can you play this now?
I believe it's on Switch. It's
Cool.
on Switch, and I believe it is still on...
Do you actually, like, turn the Switch, like, sideways?
I think there is a Tate mode, yeah, where you can turn it into a vertical screen.
I don't know if the Switch's stand works like that, like how some games could do that, but I think I've seen, like, Mario Party and stuff do it before, but...
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's the way to preserve arcade games.
Exactly, and so, yeah, you can get Ikaruga on Switch. Cool. Play it.
All right, so we are almost done. One more console, okay?
Yep.
Game Boy Advance.
Yes.
There is now. This is just like the standout stuff. Like I know when I first had my Game Boy Advance, like I mentioned, with the Link to the Passport.
Yes.
At this point, I'm probably playing for the first time Super Mario World. I'm playing Yoshi's Island. I'm experiencing these things for the first time, and while falling in love with basically the Super Nintendo without realizing it was the Super Nintendo.
Same.
Oh, cute little Super Nintendo playing into my heart. But we're talking about actual made for Game Boy Advance games, and we're starting with Advance Wars.
Advance Wars, baby.
So Fire Emblem, but tanks.
Basically, yeah. It's made by Intelligent Systems, the
Yeah.
same guys, but the thing is, it's more like a tactical, it's more of a war game than even Fire Emblem, because you actually can create new units, and you're actually trying to take strategic points and basically decimate your foe.
And you don't have to be romantically involved in any of your units, or worry if any characters perma-die.
Oh, Tank-kun, what are you doing? It's like... Tank-kun. We're supposed to be focusing on the mission. Why are you talking about holding hands?
Don't go, Sentry Senpai! There's too many ballista!
I can't believe you've done this to me, Infantry-san. Oh, God.
Advance, there's really not too much to say about it, but luckily these games are... either have recently been released or will be soon.
I think they have been finally.
We've been waiting forever. Way Forward, who does a great job at bringing back old games, made all new artwork and remade these games from the ground up, and they look spectacular.
1 and 2 both got remastered in the same package. Reboot Camp, that's what it's called.
Reboot Camp. So look it up, give it a play.
Oh yes.
Another game that definitely should be brought back, that still to this day is resting on the Game Boy Advance, is Golden Sun.
Golden Sun.
I think you can play this on NSO if you're paying for the extra N64 bundle.
Yep.
Golden Sun, which will also get a sequel, just like Advance Wars. This is a unique RPG that is it's very accessible too. It really is. Yeah, it's not too tough. It's basically like the whole theme is about the elements. Isaac is the main character, and he is the element of Earth, I believe.
Yeah, he is a Venus a Venus adept. Is what it's called.
And your characters basically learn new skills of what they could do with their elements, and you kind of use those to puzzle solve your way around the world.
And that's the thing that I think separates this from a lot of video games, because your actual in-game attacks can also be used as means to actually traverse the world.
And knowing how much I rant about Metroid, that's like my favorite aspect of a game.
Exactly.
It's really like an RPG Link to the Past.
Very much so,
you get some new skill, and you're like, I know where I can do this. And then you go to a journey to that thing, and you can find some new stuff.
And also the thing that separates it is the genie system, where you can find these little dudes out in the overworld or in dungeons, and if you fight them or just solve a puzzle, they can actually be brought to your side and power up your characters. There's different ones for all the 4 different elements: fire, earth, wind, and water. The other thing that I love about them is that you can actually mix and match different Jin to create different classes that your characters can become.
That's cool.
And they actually get different abilities that they can do. To like solve one of the puzzles, you have to put, I think it is a water genie onto Isaac, so that way he can learn Vine, and he can actually create a Vine in the overworld and go up and get a Jin.
Climb stuff.
Yep, and also too, it adds a new level of battle mechanics where if you actually wanted to use the power of a Jin in battle to like get a stat buff or a magic attack off, you can do that, and they go into standby. When they go into standby, you can summon monsters and stuff like that. And that was what sold it for me. I'm like, you mean I can summon a giant thing and get a cool cutscene on my Game Boy Advance that looks 3D? This is insane.
Yeah, it's like
so good.
Eventually the Game Boy Advance would also get ports of the Final Fantasy sets. You could play 6, 5, and 4, plus a bunch of other stuff too.
1 and 2 versions of Tactics, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah,
but that's not all out yet. Or if it was, I'd be amazed. by this point, because GBA just came out. But still, like, we will have a ton of great options on the Game Boy Advance. But this is like a made-for Game Boy Advance, and it is coming out with the Game Boy Advance.
And that's
at least
crazy.
The year. Yeah, it's so well designed too, and it's a shame that like this developed by Camelot, right?
Correct.
And that may be why it's kind of stagnant. Like Camelot anymore basically just works for Nintendo
as the Mario sports people.
Yeah, just like as an offshoot company. And I'm sure if Nintendo wanted to give them a bunch of money and say, hey, we want a new Golden Sun game on the Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever's coming out, the Super Switch. And
it's like they did that with Monolith Soft.
I know.
And it's just like...
Yeah, they basically scooped in and saved that development studio because they're super talented, and so is Camelot. But you would never really know because Camelot makes Mario sports games.
Yeah, well,
which are good. They're not bad. And I mean, like, come on, I want Golden Sun, man.
Well, the other thing, too, is the third game was on DS, and it wasn't that great, and it ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So, if we get a new Golden Sun, it'd have to be Golden Sun 4, or basically a reboot of the series.
Honestly, I think that's probably where they would go.
More than likely.
Because Golden Sun jumps a huge span of time for the sequel, too. I believe you're playing as Isaac as an adult.
Let's see. In the first two, you're playing as Isaac.
Or am I thinking of the DS game?
You're thinking of the DS game.
Okay, the DS, there's a huge jump.
You play as Isaac's son in the DS game.
Oh, his son. Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure there was an adult Isaac somewhere around there, but still.
You're fine.
Yeah, I've obviously not gotten a chance to get through to play all of these, but I've just like dabbled in the first one and know enough about it that it's really cool, and I want an excuse to play a modern one.
Yeah, I think the thing was, it was a great showcase for what the Game Boy Advance could do and was capable of.
Yes, and unfortunately, this game is trapped there at the moment, except on NSO. Which is great.
If you want to give Nintendo way more money than it needs for the expansion pack,
exactly,
be my guest.
But anyway, we have 3 more Game Boy Advance, and we're going to spend much less time on these, trust me. So Wario Land 4 happens.
Yeah!
And I think we're really just talking about this because, Zach, you love Wario Land 4.
Oh, I absolutely will. I love the Wario Land series as a rule. It's
now, I have a guilty pleasure Game Boy Advance game we're going to talk about in a moment, so this is not like we're talking about huge things that are happening later. We've spoken of Wario Land. It's
goofy, and it's a really great 2D platformer that's not Mario.
Yeah, great color, great animation. It's just more the thing is, I just want more Wario Land games. And
but Alex, you should be happy that we're getting nothing but WarioWare micro games.
Micro games. I mean, those are fun for
a little while,
a very little while. I want a Wario Land game because those are basically the spin-off of the Mario Land Game Boy series. It's like Mario's jump to portable has kind of become what Wario is, and Wario was a character from those, and he kind of stops being relevant in his own series here and just becomes the micro games guy, starting with the Game Boy Advance.
Yep, exactly. So.
Well, it is what it is. But,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should spend a little bit more time on this next one because I honestly think that this series is worth talking about.
It absolutely is.
Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix Wright.
Ace Attorney. Objection. I should have led with that.
Hold it.
We need to talk about Phoenix Wright.
There's a contradiction in your statement.
There was. I said it out of order. Silly me. It's Ace Attorney Phoenix Wright.
No. The contradiction is, how could this game come out in 2001 when clearly it came out on the DS in 2005?
Because it was in Japan.
Oh, I'm gonna go back and find more clues.
Yeah.
I'll see ya.
New evidence. Hold it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we were originally going to talk about it later, but of course, we want to talk about these games as their original, or what would be honored as their anniversary.
Exactly.
And it would be 2001 for Phoenix Wright.
Yep.
So if now's the time to talk about Phoenix Wright, Zach, I love Phoenix Wright.
I absolutely do too.
This is so good. How could you expect a visual novel game to go well on the Game Boy Advance? Are you nuts?
It went phenomenally well, apparently.
I did, and it's so creative.
It is.
God, I love the. So basically, this is a detective game, if you don't know, and I have fully reviewed the Modern Trilogy, which you can play on the Nintendo Switch, shameless plug.
Yep.
And you can play the Apollo Justice series as well.
So you can play
Dual Destinies and
Spirit of Justice. Yep. And also the great Ace Attorney series was finally ported to Switch.
So basically all of them. are on Switch right now, so you can play them, and they are worth your time. So you're a detective. Well, you're not really. You're technically a defense attorney.
Yeah.
But in anime world, you are the detective.
Yeah, you have to be.
You have to, in between days of court cases, find new evidence and try and get new people in. Like, this is totally not how court works, but it's anime court. And your client is guilty until someone else is proven guilty. Yep. It has nothing to do with the evidence. You might have proved that they had nothing to do with it on day 1. Doesn't matter. Day 4, if you couldn't find who actually did it, they're still guilty.
Someone's got to pay for the crime, and it might as well be the convenient one.
It's hysterical, too. Like, in one of the first ones, you interrogate a parrot.
Yes.
Put a parrot on the stand. There's so many hilarious characters. I think your best friend's character's name is like Butts or something.
Yep, Butz.
Yeah.
Butts.
Oh, something stinks. It must be the Butts.
Yep, and his first name is Harry.
Yep, Harry Butts. The Gumshoe.
Gumshoe, the
detective, the bumbling idiot. The moronic judge, because of course he's an idiot.
And let's not forget probably one of the best characters,
one of the best villains,
Miles Edgeworth.
Oh
my god.
I had so much fun making this episode for playing with myself. This one, I had to get in full character and write the entire script as if I was arguing for the medium itself while reviewing the game as Phoenix and Edgeworth.
It
was one of the hardest ones to write, but it was so much fun.
Well, there you go.
I only managed to do it because I happened to time it while the baby was born. Okay. And I needed a ton of time to stay home, and I couldn't make videos for a while. So since it was on hiatus, I was like, well, if I don't have my regular time to wait, I'm going to make this one like the one. I'm going to do it. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. So even though like it's a visual novel, and what's actually really great about most of the Phoenix Wright series, like pretty much always been on a portable system.
Yes.
Or you've always had the option. Like, you can get them on Steam, but you've always had that option. And since it's something that you are reading and interacting with, on top of the fact that you're investigating areas and trying to find discrepancies in what someone said, you go to a past area and you'll look around and try and find new things. That's something where you can save all the time, and you'll want to keep it with you in your pocket.
Yep.
And it's something like you can work around through your head while you're just going through your day life, and it's really cool.
And some of these segments are actually made to be bite-sized since it's on the Game Boy Advance. Like, the investigation sections aren't that long, and unless if you're just brute forcing everything in the court case sections, they're not going to take that long until, it ends on like a twist or a cliffhanger.
Yeah. And they're good twists too.
They really
it's actually like it's funny, but it's an engaging story. Like every time you'll see like each one begins with like a little teaser clip showing the murder or the attack or whatever it is in action, the crime, and you think like, there's no way I'm getting this person out of that, or that, how can that not be what I just saw? And you'll get more evidence, you will learn more things, and you will figure everything out, and it all comes together really brilliantly every single time.
And the thing that I like is that the early cases, especially in the first game, you know exactly who is the person who did the murder in the first one.
You just can't prove it.
Right, but as the cases go on, you kind of get the snippets are more and more vague, and they're a lot more misleading as things go on too. So you're not entirely sure what your preconceived way of thinking should be. It's like, oh, well, this is an accident, or it's like, oh, wait, no, this is actually a murder. This person did it. Wait, did they really? And so
what's also really brilliant is it'll reuse characters from past cases too, where they'll like become new mainline characters to like stay with the story as it progresses.
And that even goes from game to game as well.
Yeah, it does. It's really impressive. But anyway, this is the beginning of Ace Attorney. We probably aren't going to be talking about it ever again. We just wanted to mention it is happening because you play one, you've kind of played all of them.
But it's also a very consistent series. Like,
yes, it's consistently great.
Yeah, the mechanics, they add and take away a couple things here and there.
Yeah.
Sometimes
you spray like luminol fluid to find blood sometimes.
Yeah, in the second one, there's like the little... Yeah, there's like little heart locks.
Oh yeah, break the lots
to break down the
contradictions in somebody to break through to make them snap.
But the core is always solid. Yes. I think so. Yeah, they're really good. I like them a lot. Is this your guilty pleasure last one?
My guilty pleasure.
Okay.
Mario Kart Super Circuit comes out this year.
It does.
I had to weasel it into this episode somehow because in a previous Hitbox episode, I said I wanted to talk about this game, and I didn't realize how big of a year it was that it was actually coming out in. But this is basically a way to play, and very similarly to Smash Melee.
Yeah.
I had also played Mario Kart 64. at neighbors or cousin's house.
Yeah.
And so I'd experienced that game that way, and I was like, that was really fun. I want to play that.
Yeah.
But I only have this tiny little system. And I was just thinking, I really wish that they found some way to make something like that. And I go into the store trying to find a game for myself, and
lo and behold.
Wow.
Yeah. There you go.
It's almost, because here, think of it. Mario Kart 64 is using sprites for its characters to give the illusion that they are actually driving around. And for the most part, those are the same sprites. They're different sprites. But it is the same sort of system that is making Mario Kart Super Circuit work. Now, there's obviously no 3D terrain and models or anything. The DS would have to do that for us later. But the way that this game is just still able to pull all this off and function, it's amazing. Because you would think, like, 1-to-1, the Game Boy Advance is like a little bit more power of a Super Nintendo.
It's very
in your hand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with those ports we had. So I would expect, like, the Super Nintendo Mario Kart, right?
Yeah.
But this is so much more grand than that. Well, and there's even some of those old courses brought back.
Exactly, yeah, because I was going to say, going back to how the Game Boy Advance was basically secretly making you a lover of the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and then it put the Super Nintendo courses in there. I'm like, oh!
Yeah, you basically are almost playing another game, which is Super Mario Kart.
I really did just have a portable Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did, didn't I? I totally got around my my parents not wanting me to play any of these games.
Aha.
Oh my goodness, this was a big year.
Yeah, it really was.
So there was just a lot of consoles. There was a lot of stuff going on all at once, and a lot of debut things. And PS2, kind of, coming late to the game after releasing its console early, and then boom, here's all the stuff you can play now.
Yep.
And it will not stop coming.
Nope.
We'll get some more in 2002 for sure. But for now, we got to wrap this sucker up. Zach,
all right.
What is your favorite game to play this year in 2001?
Well, my favorite game to play throughout this whole year would have been Ico. Out of all the ones that we mentioned. Yep, absolutely.
So if it's 2001, you got to only play one. You're buying Ico.
I'm buying Ico day one. I love this game. I really do love this game so much.
I am happy that you can enjoy it, because otherwise I wouldn't see, in games like that. This goes to for any game that I don't like personally. I want to know that other people like it. Because otherwise, then if it's universally hated, why does it exist?
Right. Well, and the thing too, from what I understand, it's like I get it. This game is definitely not for everyone, especially around the time, because it's like, what's this hand-holding game on my cool sleek PS2?
Oh yeah, this game is way ahead of its time.
It's
nothing like, it's like almost like Animal Crossing. It's the kind of a browser game that we wouldn't expect at this time period.
Right.
And similarly to how I feel about Ico, I can't really get into Animal Crossing because I just can't calm down.
Right. And
that's an anxiety thing for me.
And for me, it was, for the longest time, it was Dark Souls. Like, I understood that it was a good game, and it just never clicked for years.
Yeah, and because I know that eventually clicked for you, gives me faith that I can eventually come around with Shadow of the Colossus. So we'll maybe one day we'll eventually try and make good on that. But still, yes, Ico is your favorite. But what would you give your influential? What's the most important game that came out this year?
This was a hard one, especially everything that came out.
Yeah, this is hard. I think I intentionally picked a different one than you, just so we could have two winners.
Yeah,
because there's so many.
I think I almost went with Halo originally, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, I think Grand Theft Auto 3 is the more influential game.
Aside from just affecting the general public.
Yeah.
In such a huge stink. Well, and even ignoring that, just in terms of as a game.
It was as an open world.
Yes.
This was like the first open world game I can think of that really took off.
3D open world.
3D open world, yes.
That, like, sandbox.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
probably the world. Open sandbox that really gave everyone the whole package.
And the fact that the game didn't care what you did. It's just like, hey, you want to get into a standoff with the police? Yeah, sure, go for it. Just eventually make sure that you've got enough firepower to take down the army when we send it.
Yeah, you want to go show your mom that you can go bang a hooker and then go shoot her in the head?
And get your money back that you paid her?
That's up to you, kid. Good luck being grounded.
Oh my god. But again, why did you get that game for your kid if you're so sensitive about that?
That's a whole other HITBOX episode,
I know,
man.
my
It
bad.
totally is.
Yeah.
I can't believe we didn't think of even writing that one down, but we totally should.
I'm going to.
I swear, every episode we record, we're like, man, that would be a great HITBOX episode.
Yeah, but what about you, sir? What was your favorite of 2001? Just getting and just playing all year.
This is so tough, too, because there's so many great ones. But if I have to pick one, it would be unfair for me to not pick the one game that I probably have over 1,000 hours on. And that is Super Smash Bros. Melee.
That is a perfectly fine choice. I totally get it.
The fact that you got to understand also pre-internet, And I'm playing this game fully content with when I bought it. Like, this roster already is bigger than the last game when you boot it up. And I'm playing this game, and all of a sudden, just me casually, I'll like, unlock some character. I'm like, whoa! There's other characters?
Yeah.
And then you start playing, and you would never know. Like, this unfortunately can never happen again because of the way that games work with the internet. You know, we have to know everything before a game comes out. You can't surprise somebody with a huge crossover.
No.
And, you know, I'm just playing my game, and all of a sudden, like, bam, hold on. What are you talking about? Like, Pichu?
Yeah.
You know, how is Pichu gonna win?
Exactly.
But still, like, Falco? You know, there's all sorts of weird stuff in this. And, like, it would just keep going. And the ones that really got me the most were, like, Game & Watch and Ganondorf and Mewtwo and boy, the adventure modes and stuff. So I would like keep playing it forever because you would never know like what's the stipulation? What's the game looking for me to unlock something? Sometimes it would seem like it was random. It would check the weirdest stuff. Look up the requirements for unlocking this. I don't want to talk about Melee some more about this, but the requirements were intentionally vague. Say, like, leave the game on for X amount of time and Mewtwo randomly appears.
Yep.
Beat, like, adventure mode on this requirement, or beat, like, home run smash and all that other stuff, and you'll get, like, other characters who just randomly pop in.
Not to mention the amount of content they actually packed into that game.
So much. So much. So, yeah, if there's any game I can even still probably go back to, I still feel that Melee is good enough to go back and play, even though Ultimate exists, just because, if anything, because of that adventure mode. I miss that so much. World of Light I love, but it's not Melee's
World of Light's
mode.
okay, I liked it well enough, yeah. But what about, what do you think was the most influential of this year, sir?
Well, if you're taking Grand Theft Auto...
I did.
But, man, there's so many this year. Like,
I know.
Animal Crossing creates so much. Pikmin is... It should have been gargantuan. Devil May Cry.
Metal Gear Solid 2.
Metal Gear 2, man. But no. RuneScape.
RuneScape, yeah.
But I am landing on Halo.
That makes sense,
I think, as you were going to do it too.
Yeah.
Halo didn't just, like, create an offshoot of that Doom clone, as I kind of joked before. Halo started this whole boom of the multiplayer group shooter that would, like, necessitate, like, LAN parties.
Yeah.
And it like created this whole gaming culture in and of itself.
And the thing I think that is also very influential about this is the fact that this was a console shooter. What GoldenEye did, this game eventually carried on and made first-person shooters a viable and very successful and lucrative option on console.
Yes.
So without this game, I don't know what the landscape would have looked like.
I don't know if we would have half of the there's countless games that are just trying to be Halo. And we have this effect in gaming history. You see, like, one game does something like a breakout great, and then there's a ton of copycats the next year.
Yeah.
Well, it's usually however much the average dev time is, because anymore we'll start seeing, like, Elden Ring copycats in a few years, or just in a year or so, because that's how it works. You know, we got a ton of Breath of the Wild likes, you know, after like 3 or so years after that point, and then that's just how the industry works. People see something, they're like, I made a ton of money, I want the money. And Halo, it made the money.
It made the money.
It made the money. Because, boy, and Microsoft is still kind of sitting on that, like, that's their golden child, even though they really...
They really fluffed Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
They just... that just got so mishandled from what I understand.
Probably not going to talk about... Honestly, I don't even know if we need to talk about Halo 2 when it happened. We might just say, like, it happens this year, because... Talking about Halo in general, as we are this year, this is Halo. There is effectively, sure, it's a second one. More people technically play that one over the other one, and it was the one that really people think of when they think of Halo, but we're talking about Halo, we're talking about Halo. It's not saying, it's like Phoenix Wright. We covered it, you know, it did its boom.
Exactly.
Oh, but boy, oh boy, 2001. That's a good year.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal year.
And it gets better, because guess what? Well, you know what the PS2 just did this year of, like, all its latent potential showing up? Yeah, GameCube and Game Boy Advance are about to start hitting us hard.
That's right.
That's good stuff. But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of HITBOX. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us keep it alive by supporting us on Patreon with the links in the show notes in this video's description. And for those of you on YouTube, remember to like the video and subscribe for more, and be sure to let us know what you thought of the show and what other topics you'd like to hear us cover in the future. And special thanks to all of our Patreon members. Booyah!
See ya!